Hi, I'm Hank Meyer, and I moved to Florida in 1969 from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
It's very nice to have you join us, Mr. Meyer. My name is Sandy Altner. I am a volunteer interviewer with the Boca Raton Historical Society, and today is April 4th,
2016.
I've been writing in 1916. Today it's April 4th, 2016, excuse me. And we are at the television studios at Lynn University here in Boca Raton, Florida. This project is recording the oral history of the Jewish community of South Florida, and with a particular focus, of course, on Boca Raton.
Right.
We are very interested in having you join us today because of your unique background. I would like to ask you, first of all, to tell us why it is that you came to South Florida.
Well, I had I started off as a ham radio operator, and my major when I went to RPI was electronic communications engineering. But unfortunately, I wasn't invited back the second year because I spent most of my time at the campus radio station. Then I went to work on Day Street, which was near Cortlandt Street, which was the Radio Row in downtown Manhattan before they built the first World Trade Center. And I worked for a place called Blam the Radio Man, and they sold all kinds of electronic war surplus material, plus a line of new products, micro switches and solenoids and things like that. After a year, I decided I wanted to go back to college. So they told me that if I went for a whole year without credit, but I got good grades, I would be able to get back in. So I went to Long Island University, and I studied chemistry for a year. And then I got back into college, and I went to Pratt Institute. I had 3 years in at Pratt Institute in electronic communications engineering, and my father should rest in peace. He had bought his business in 1957 from his two partners, and he decided that he wanted me to come into his business with him. So in 1959, when I got married, I went into the business with him.
And so from 1959, how did you get to 1969 in South Florida?
Okay.
Just for the sake, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make sure that we get to some of the fascinating where you've been
Okay,
doing.
we decided that the business couldn't make it in New York, and that the following year, the union contract and the lease were up. So we went around to various places. We decided on Scranton, Pennsylvania, on the Pennsylvania Industrial Development Program. They put up a building for us, which I went and helped the architect design for flow of material and things like that. And in early 1961, we moved the plant to Scranton, Pennsylvania, actually Dunmore, a suburb. 2 years later, my father passed away. And then I had the business for the rest of the time. In 1967, I took over another company, and we were manufacturing additional products in the same line, which was fabricated metal products. In late 1968, I sold the business to a conglomerate called Associated Scranton Industries. And in early 1969, I moved to Florida. Then I lost all my money.
Why did you move to Florida?
Oh, well, it was a strange thing. I used to exhibit at various trade shows. And at one of the trade shows at the New York Premium Show, the fellow in the booth next to us had these certificates that, which was a premium that people gave out, where you had a free weekend in Miami Beach. You paid your airfare, but the hotel was free and so on. So my wife and I, we went on one of these, they gave me one of the certificates, and we went to Miami Beach, and I fell in love with the climate, and at that time with the place. We drove around, and it didn't have the congestion that we had in New York. I didn't want to go back to New York. So we moved to South Florida in early 1969.
So you moved to South Florida, though. Was this for a business opportunity? Was this because you wanted to be someplace where there was a Jewish community? Was this because of the weather? What was the reason, really, to move to Florida?
Well, there were various reasons. I had an aunt and uncle who had previously moved here, and they lived in North Miami Beach. And as a matter of fact, well, they lived in an apartment, and they bought a house in North Miami Beach. And I came down first, and they had a couple of months to go on the lease on the apartment, and I stayed in that apartment. And while I looked around to see about things, I didn't have anything to go to. I didn't have a business. I had some stock that I received from the sale of the business, but it had a 2-year restriction on it, and I couldn't do anything with it. I had some cash, okay, but unfortunately, when I came down, and I went into one of these pyramid marketing situations. This was before the federal government got after them for the type of pyramid systems that they were, and the fellow who recruited me, we had an office in downtown Miami at the Ingram Building, and I had to pay part of the rent and so on. And we used to put on opportunity meetings all over in Manhattan. We went to the Four Ambassadors and places like that. In other words, you had to show that you were prosperous, so that the people that you tried to recruit, thought that it was a good thing to invest in. So this went on for a year and a half or 2 years, and all the money that I had was going out and going out, and
that's how you lost your money?
Yeah. So that's how I found myself in a situation where I didn't know what I was going to do. At the time, my wife was working for a market research company, the people who are in the malls and they take the surveys. But my wife was in the office, and she did audits to make sure that the people who were taking the surveys were actually doing their job and were actually interviewing people. The husband of the lady who owned this market research company worked for Sears in the commercial division. So I had a sales background because the company that we moved to Scranton manufactured not only fabricated metal products, but we had a low-end line of smokers and drinkers items, chrome-plated and glass, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I was in sales, and as I say, I was at the New York Premium Show. I was also an exhibitor. So I had a sales background. So I asked him if he knew if there were any jobs available in Sears, and I got a job selling vacuum cleaners in Sears Roebuck, the North Side store on Northwest 27th Avenue and 79th Street.
Okay, so this was in 1969?
November 1970.
Okay.
And this was after the riots in Liberty City.
Okay.
So that store at one time was Sears's highest grossing, highest profit store in the entire chain. But since the riots, it had been going down and down and down.
Let's talk a little bit about Liberty City, because this does tie us to the Jewish community. What can you tell me about when you first moved here with your wife? What's her name?
Irene.
Irene. So when you and Irene first moved down here, was it important to you to be someplace where you would have contact with a Jewish community?
Yes.
What did you have as you were growing up then, or what was your life with Irene like in terms of your Judaism at that time? Were you actively involved in synagogue? Were you just much more interested in having cultural ties to the Jewish community? How would you describe it?
Well, my Jewish life started way before Irene. Okay.
Of course.
And I went to a Hebrew school, and that was one of the things that I did among lots and lots of other things that unfortunately changed my life in different ways, because I was so busy. Fortunately, have a good singing voice. Okay, and they had taken me to to see if my voice was good enough to be trained, and I didn't want to go because I was already taking piano lessons. I was with the Cub Scouts. I was going to Hebrew school. I was doing all kinds of other things. Unfortunately, I didn't go, and it was at the Juilliard School that I would have gone to. But that's another missed opportunity. So anyway, I always have been like, rising to the top. When I was a Cub Scout, I was always, I was the scribe. In other words, I was one of the leadership.
Okay. And in the Jewish community as
and
well?
yes, now in the Jewish community, and for most of the time that I've been here in Florida, yes, with the Jewish community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of those activities, because I think you've probably done so very many different things in your life that it's hard to find a point to really start with this. But I know that we have in you also someone who has been very much involved in Jewish journalism in South Florida. So to go back to an earlier question, when you moved here, was it important then to find a Jewish community for you and your wife to feel comfortable to be here? Was that something that was important?
Yes, that was. And we didn't actually do anything for the first couple of years, because when we first moved down, we were in an apartment on Miami Beach. We came in the summertime, and then as we got closer toward the winter, they raised the rent, so we had to leave there, and we got a furnished apartment in North Miami. And then a year later, when I was working for Sears, then we were able to get an unfurnished apartment in North Miami Beach, and we moved we had our furniture in storage, and we got it out, and we were in that apartment. Then we decided that we wanted to buy a house, and we looked around and we decided on the Sunrise area. Now, we've been there for 43 years in this house, and yes, it was a good Jewish community there. Originally we joined Temple Emmanuel, which was the founding Jewish congregation in Broward County, and they were on Oakland Park Boulevard, just east of 441, which was not far from where Irene's mother lived.
Okay, and what kind of a congregation was that?
It's a Reform congregation.
Okay.
Yes.
So did the Reform congregation, as the founding congregation in that area, was it much more of a Reform kind of community that you felt was developing here, or was this something you were particularly seeking out?
I wasn't particularly seeking out a Reform community.
Did you grow up Reform?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I think that's also something we see has happened too, where people have grown up in conservative or Orthodox communities. What was your experience growing up then? Was it Orthodox?
Yes, the Kingsway Jewish Center in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to talk about temperamental cantors or chazans, but what happened was I decided that I wanted to do the entire service, including all of the singing portions, because they told me that I had the voice. Why don't I go and why don't I do it? So I learned all of the singing portions and so on, and the chazan, temperamental kind of a guy, reluctantly, helped me to learn it all. But he was kind of like in the background, because he gave me wire recordings. I don't know if anybody remembers a wire recorder, okay? But this was a stainless steel wire that went back and forth between two reels. That was before they had tape, okay? And there was this little closet-type room that I went into, and that I could, that nobody else could hear what was going on. And I would sing along with it and so on. And I learned all of the singing portions, and I did I did the whole thing.
How old were you at that time?
I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the chazan had to sit there and seethe while I was doing that. Okay.
So how do you go from that experience as a youngster with so much talent and so much depth of knowledge of the Orthodox community to be able to conduct a service, to as an adult coming to South Florida many years later and joining a Reformed congregation?
Well, actually, after my bar mitzvah, there wasn't very much of me that went to anything that was religious. Okay, I went away to college, and when I was at RPI, I spent a lot of Sunday mornings at a church in Schenectady. Okay, I got in with this group, and they insisted on taking me to church, and I was there on many occasions, and it just wasn't something for me. As a matter of fact, I mean, this was a very large church, and there were maybe, I don't know, 5,000 people in the congregation when I was there. And I remember finally, one Sunday morning, the preacher was saying, "Who here has not sinned?" And I stood up and said, "I have not sinned." And I believe that there are some of those people who still remember me and are still praying for me. But it just was not for me. I couldn't believe in it. So when I met Irene, we started to go to the Avenue R Temple in Brooklyn, which was a Reformed temple. And then there were times that, we were out of religion and so on. We were into each other and going, used to go to the opera in New York. I was the dandy. I had my Chesterfield coat with the velvet collar and my Homburg hat and my walking stick when I went to the opera. So I mean, we were involved with other. We used to go to the art theaters and see all of the foreign art films and so on. And we weren't in New York for a long time after we were married, because it was like almost 2 years. Irene was a licensed teacher, and she had a teaching position in Brooklyn. So when we moved to Scranton, she didn't have to work, but she volunteered at the Jewish Community Center in Scranton.
Okay, so then you've had an involvement in the Jewish community, both you and your wife, during that time. When you came here then, so it would have been important to Irene to have found a Jewish community as well, is that correct?
Right.
Right, so when you finally settled then in Sawgrass and you wound up at this Reformed temple, what was that a large part of your life, or what can you tell me about what Jewish life was like in 1970 in South Florida?
Okay. Outside of the temple, there wasn't very much that I could, find or came to me. All right. When I was in Scranton, I joined B'nai B'rith in 1963. 1963. I joined B'nai B'rith, but at the time it was mostly I was in the bowling league, B'nai B'rith Bowling League, and it was at the Jewish Community Center, so I also joined the JCC House League, and I was bowling in 2 leagues. And I went to lodge meetings of the Amos Lodge, which was number 136 of B'nai B'rith. And then I started to become a little bit more interested in what B'nai B'rith did and so on. And I went to several district conventions which were held at the Concord. And I used to drive to the Concord for the conventions, and I found out more about what B'nai B'rith did.
That's in PA, you mean? This was in Pennsylvania?
That's when I when I lived in Scranton. Yes. Right. Yeah. So I found out that B'nai B'rith started the Anti-Defamation League, and was involved in Hillel, and had the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization and community service projects and all kinds of things. So when I moved to Florida, I was there in Scranton for 8 years. Okay, and after I sold the business, as I say, I moved to Florida. So when I came to Florida, I started to seek out to see if there were any B'nai B'rith lodges. There wasn't a B'nai B'rith lodge in Sunrise at the time, but about a year later, this was around in 1973, about a couple of years later, B'nai B'rith sent a fellow down by the name of Jack Glick, and his job was to open up B'nai B'rith lodges because the South Florida region was burgeoning with Jewish people, and B'nai B'rith wanted them to join, lodges, but there weren't a lot of lodges. Okay, so he started opening up B'nai B'rith lodges, and one of those was the Sunrise Lodge, but that was basically a lodge in Sunrise Lakes, which was for the retirees, in the retirement community. Now, we lived in the city of Sunrise, not around the corner from Sunrise Lakes, but we live in a private house, which was built by the same developer, and it was younger working people. Okay,
right. Just to interrupt for 1 second, could you describe what the activities of a B'nai B'rith lodge would be? What was the appeal of joining B'nai B'rith?
Well, the appeal was that you got to know other Jewish people in the area, in the neighborhood, and so on. A lot of people used it for business connections, and
was there a religious base?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a religious base at all at the B'nai B'rith?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was a religious base. It was strictly a Jewish service organization where you had to be Jewish to join, but there was no test as to what kind of a Jew you were. You could be anything from a secular Jew to a Haredi, okay? And you could join B'nai B'rith.
Okay, and so as a service organization, what was the appeal then for people to want to join? You talk about the community and getting to know other Jewish people and so on. Was that something that, as it developed there, that came through to being a very positive part of like how B'nai B'rith grew here?
Oh yes, well, and of course Israel was a very important part of the programming and the projects that B'nai B'rith has done down over the years. But it was the kind of an organization where you could pick and choose what you wanted to be involved with. If you wanted to be involved with college students, there was Hillel. You wanted to be involved with teenagers, there was a B'nai B'rith youth organization. Okay. If you wanted to be involved with Israel, there was Israel. If you wanted to do community projects, there was, B'nai B'rith Community Volunteer Services programs. So whatever you wanted to do within the Jewish community, it was there in B'nai B'rith for you to become part of.
And B'nai B'rith became a very large part of your life.
Yes.
How so?
Oh, as I say, I joined that Sunrise Lodge in late 1973. It actually received its charter early in 1974. But when I brought in 26 new members to that lodge. What I did was on Sunday mornings, I went in my community, okay, down to the areas where there were people moving in and so on, and I was looking for mezuzahs on the doorposts. And I knocked on doors on Sunday mornings, and I got a lot of people to join B'nai B'rith. But the local lodge was the Sunrise Lodge. But when I looked to see, well, let me see, what kind of leadership opportunities are there here in the Sunrise Lodge, usually what occurred was that past presidents of lodges up north, or of councils, or of districts and things like that, would come here, and then they would want to be president of the new lodge, okay? So you look down the line and you find that there's already 8 people in line to become president, all right? So I was with the Sunrise Lodge and bringing in members for a year or so. Then it dawned on me that this is not for me. If I wanted to become a leader in the B'nai B'rith community, the first thing you have to do is you have to be a past lodge president. Then you can go into other levels of B'nai B'rith. So I decided to start my own lodge for young working people, okay, which I did. And I believe we called it Zion Lodge. And then I signed up another 50 people to start that lodge. Then around that time, a few years later was when B'nai B'rith had the had the fight with B'nai B'rith women. B'nai B'rith women was a separate organization, although they used the same name and some of the same programs they were involved with, like with Hillel and and ADL and so on and so forth. B'nai B'rith decided that they wanted to allow women to come into B'nai B'rith organization itself. So they started what was called units. And a unit would be that the male belonged to B'nai B'rith, and then the female belonged to B'nai B'rith women. Okay. But then later on, B'nai B'rith wanted women, unaffiliated women, to come and join B'nai B'rith as an equal member to the men who were in B'nai B'rith. And the organization B'nai B'rith Women didn't like that because they felt that they were going to lose prospective members, or many of the B'nai B'rith Women's members would go over to B'nai B'rith and join B'nai B'rith. So there was a big problem there. But anyway, we had lots of lodges that Jack Glick started, including here in Boca Raton. And at one time, I guess there may have been at least 10 or 12 lodges in Boca Raton. There was Boca Lago and Boca West, and of course the one at Century Village, which met at the synagogue that's on the grounds there at the Century Village, and many, many others.
Has B'nai B'rith remained an organization that has continued to grow, or have things changed and has it waned over the years?
Unfortunately, B'nai B'rith is not the same organization that it was when I originally joined it.
What happened?
What happened was that the entire Jewish population started to decline, and there were surveys that were made as to what all the Jewish communities would look like in 20 years and 30 years and so on and so forth. And that because of intermarriage and people who were going away from the faith, and it just didn't mean anything to them any longer, and so on, assimilation.
But what year do you think it started to decline?
We're talking about in the 80s, in the middle 80s.
It started to change.
Yeah, it started to change. Not only did it start to change, but as I say, they had these surveys that were showing that down the line, that the communities would be declining. So about, and I'm not sure, it's somewhere about 10 to 12 years ago. Okay, B'nai B'rith reorganized. Okay, we had the original situation here in Florida was that we had the lodge or the unit. Okay, then the next level was the council, and that was a group of lodges and units in a geographical area. Then we had the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith, which included all of the lodges and units in the entire state, and it had its own projects. It was originally started in the year 1936, and its initial project was to supply a building or some kind of a facility at the University of Florida in Gainesville to be used as the Hillel House.
Right, okay.
So that's how the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith, down through the years, has always been involved with Hillel.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you there because I don't want to run out of time before we have a chance to talk about the changes that you've seen in the Jewish community from when you first arrived in South Florida in the late 1960s to here we are all these years later. How to 2016. So when we look at those changes, what do you see as an overview of how things started with the Jewish community and what they've become today? Is there a decline?
Oh, yes. And I can see it in my own temple. Okay. We joined Temple Emmanuel, which was the founding synagogue actually in Broward County. No, it was number one. It was the first synagogue, not the first reform. It was the first synagogue. Okay, it started way back in 1926, and then it actually became an entity, real entity, because that was just people meeting together. Okay, around 1936. It had moved to Oakland Park Boulevard, as I said, just east of 441. And then their membership started to decline, and there were those in the congregation who felt that if they built a new sanctuary, that they would be able to attract more and more members. So they did that. And it attracted some new members, but again, the membership started to decline. In 2004, Temple Emmanuel merged with Temple Kol Ami, which is another Reformed temple in Plantation, and it became Temple Kol Ami Emmanuel. So we went from that Temple Emmanuel to the merged temple in Plantation, where we still are. Mm-hmm. And we brought a certain number of members with us, and that, of course, together we were bigger than we were, separately. And as I say, that was declining. Our membership started to decline again. Temple Kol Ami was the largest Reformed temple in Broward County at the time, and probably still is, although the membership had also started to decline there. So, I was able to see it all the way along, plus, the number of lodges and units of B'nai B'rith. The people got older. Unfortunately, they passed away. They weren't able to drive at night to come to meetings and things like that. So, the membership in B'nai B'rith was declining as well. Mm-hmm. And, then people started moving from Broward County to southern Palm Beach County. Right. That's how the Boca Raton area started to increase in its Jewish population.
How was it that South Palm Beach County became so important as the center for Jewish community life in South Florida?
I'm not sure, except that it might be that the younger people who started off in Broward County found that the communities were deteriorating, getting older, and there was new construction and the new communities going up in Boca Raton, and they were in they were doctors, attorneys, and so on, and their income was considerably higher than the income of the retirees who had come down from north and started Jewish communities in Broward County. So they tended to go toward the more affluent communities in Boca Raton and in South Palm Beach County.
Okay. Now, I don't want to run out of time before we talk about your journalism career, too, because you've been involved in making sure that the Jewish story was told through a couple of different publications. What have you been involved in terms of journalism, Jewish journalism?
Well, when I became involved with the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith, they had a publication which was called the Florida State B'nai B'rith News. It was published by a company in Miami, which was called the Jewish Floridian. This was a newspaper for the Jewish communities in South Florida, actually the whole state of Florida, before there was the Jewish Journal. And it was put out by a fellow by the name of Fred Shockett. And he had his plant and office like in a basement in Miami. And I remember I used to gather information, and then I would go down, I would bring it to them. They would typeset it, okay? I would help them lay it out on the pages, and then they would print it and mail it for the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith. His publication ceased, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago or longer. Okay, and as you know, the Jewish Journal came in, which was part of the Sun Sentinel. The previous editor of the newspaper that I did for the Florida State Association was Neil Littauer, who is in Miami, and he's in the public relations business. So I took that over from him, and I just got thrown into it.
So you were the publisher?
No, I was the editor. Yeah, but that was actually not my first, because when I was a ham radio operator, I was president of the Pratt Institute Radio Club, and we put out our own little newsletter, and I took care of putting that out. I didn't have a journalism background or even a background in English, because I was studying engineering. So I just decided to do it, and I had to learn it quickly, and I did. After that, I became president of the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith in 1982. And I could go into the projects that we did while I was president, including we bought a building in Tallahassee, which still today is the Hillel House there for Florida State University. Now, I didn't start that project, but I finished it in my administration. That project was started in the previous administration when Judge Paul Bachman was president of the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith. But even before that, I was involved in the committee that renovated the Hillel House at University of Florida in Gainesville. That was the Hillel House that was built in the 50s that replaced the log cabin that was the original Hillel House in Gainesville. Okay, and we renovated that in 1977.
And the most recent project would have been housing for seniors, is that correct?
Right.
And could you tell us a little bit about that one then?
Yes. When I was president of Florida State B'nai B'rith, we put in an application for HUD subsidized low-income senior housing. And at the time, we had a piece of land which was provided for us, and it was in Palm Beach County. But that project was turned down. And that was, as I say, in 1982. Several years, we put in an application almost every year. A few years later, we were provided with this land in Deerfield Beach, and we received a lot of help from the Deerfield Beach City Council and the mayor and the city manager and so on in trying to get the project through. And that project finally went through in 1987, and the first phase of the building was erected in 1988. Mm-hmm. We now have 3 phases, 270 apartments, and we provide everything for all the low-income seniors who live there. I serve on the board of directors and have for at least 10 years, maybe longer. And we think about projects that we can do to make their lives easier and to make the apartments more comfortable for them. And we put new elevators in Building 1 already and new roofs on the buildings. Now we're in a project where we're replacing all of the cabinets in the kitchens and in the bathrooms. So we always keep it modern, and we have a lot of activities for them. They have activity directors. We have, and we're going on the 26th, which is still during Passover. We're going to have our Passover Seder there. We have a Thanksgiving dinner for them. And we have parties for them,
So it seems to me that you have found yourself a very comfortable place in the Jewish community and an opportunity to help grow specific aspects of the Jewish community in having come down this way.
Oh, yes. In fact, I started back in 1976, something which got called the B'nai B'rith Hillel Advisory Board of Broward and Palm Beach Counties. And what happened was when I first got involved with the Florida State Association of B'nai B'rith, as I say, they were involved with Hillel. I went to several meetings, and the president sought me out, and he said to me, "Look, I see you coming around to meetings. Is there any particular phase of B'nai B'rith that you'd like to be involved with?" I said, "Well, gee, I mean, they do so many things. I'm not sure, where I would fit in. So what do you need?" So he said to me, "Well, there's no official Hillel programs in Broward and Palm Beach counties, and we need somebody to try and get this going." And I said, "Well, I have no idea of how to do it, but okay, I'll give it a try."
And you were successful.
Oh, yes.
Very successful indeed. What was the result of the work you did there?
Well, we've had official Hillel programs in Broward and Palm Beach counties now since 1979. And the way that I did it was, by the way, this president, and I hate to say it, several months later, he was a doctor and he was indicted for Medicare fraud. So he had to leave the position and he moved to California. So I was without he had been involved with Hillel, okay? So I didn't have him as a resource. But I looked around and I saw that the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization had a regional board. And I said, "Hey, that's what we have to do. We have to create a Hillel regional board." So that's what I did. I created this board, and I made the members of the board were the presidents and the Hillel chairpersons of all of the B'nai B'rith lodges and units in Broward and Palm Beach counties, and all of the presidents and Hillel chairpersons of all the B'nai B'rith women's chapters as well. And we started having meetings. We started in a clock restaurant in a back room, and we had breakfast, and we started there. And the aim was to spread the word that we needed to have official programs of Hillel in Broward and Palm Beach counties. And we also had to start collecting some money because there was no money to do this.
Right. And it ended up being a tremendous success.
It was, but there were other things that were involved. At the same time that I started this Hillel Advisory Board, the Greater Miami Jewish Federation decided that they had a lot of students who lived in Dade County. This was before it was Miami-Dade County. It was called Dade County.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of Jewish students who attended colleges outside of Dade County. Okay. So, in Gainesville and in Tallahassee and even starting at FAU. So they decided that there was a regional board in Dade County, which was called the Greater Miami Hillel Foundations, okay, which also built the Hillel House at the University of Miami. So they took $500,000 as seed money, and they created a board which was called the Hillel Foundations of Florida. And the purpose was that they were going to get all of the other federations and federated Jewish communities in the state of Florida to join this board and to be involved in funding for Hillel outside of Dade County in the rest of Florida. Okay? And when I found that this was going on, I realized that not only was it necessary for me to have my Hillel board, but there was also politics involved. And that if you weren't on the inside, you weren't going to be able to get anything done. So when I found that this board was being established, I decided I've got to get onto that board, which I did. I got onto the Hillel Foundations of Florida board, eventually becoming treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
yeah.
I'm sorry we're running right out of time here, but we certainly thank you for all of your volunteerism in the community and for the opportunity to come to speak with us today. Just one quick question for you. As you look back over the many years that you've had here, do you have a sense that with all of these things that the Jewish community will continue to grow, or do you think it will diminish at this point?
Based on my experience, unfortunately, I think that it's going to diminish, and that's unfortunate. We do what we can to try and increase, our Jewish participation, and those who are, who say that they are Jewish, but because of intermarriage and various other things where people just don't think that it's important any longer, we have a very difficult task in order to even keep the same numbers that we have.
Mr. Meyer, thank you so very much, Hank Meyer, for joining us at the Boca Raton Historical Society Jewish Oral History Project. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, if you had more time, or if you want to have me back, I have a lot more resources. I was in the printing and mailing service business, okay, and I printed and mailed lots and lots of Jewish publications for chapters and lodges and so on, including Hadassah and various others. And I have older copies of those that you could go through.
I want to make sure that I introduce you to Sue to let her know more about this.
Yeah, and you can go through those and get information as to what went on all those years in the Jewish communities as far as projects and programs and so on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you.